So welcome. It is March 5th, 2024, and we are the Florida End-of-Life Doula Association. I'm Lynn Principe. I'm here with Shanti, Vani from the association, and we're excited. We're going to share our ideas and experience around rituals and ceremony tonight. We'll have plenty of time for you all to share as well. And I just love this conversation because I've seen the power of ritual and ceremony when it comes to our end of life work. Even something so simple like we all just did, lighting our candle. It takes our day from the ordinary to adding a little bit of mindfulness. And ritual can be that simple, honestly. I think it's really about intention and it's about setting the tone. A little bit about my background. Like most of you, I'm an end-of-life doula, and I love to use ritual with my clients and families. And I'm also a life cycle celebrant, which is kind of a fancy way to me as calling. I'm actually a funeral celebrant mostly. So I do a lot of funeral ceremonies. I've probably done 40 to 50 funerals, and I love to incorporate rituals and to dive deep into sacred ceremonies. So I would like to get started just with some slides. Is there anything you want to add before we jump into it, Shanti?
No, that's fine.
Okay,
Let's
perfect.
mute ourselves if we're not speaking. I'm going to do that too.
I'm going to share my screen, and I've got just some slides. I'm going to go through them, and in each slide, I've got a few examples, and I'm going to just share some examples of some rituals and ceremonies that I've used with my clients, and then Shanti's going to share something that she does with her grief clients. So here we are. We're going to be covering rituals and ceremonies tonight. I'll start here. Okay, so why do we include rituals and ceremonies in our work? So we want to bring sacredness to rites of passage with or without religion. And what I come to find is we really crave that sacredness, especially at the end of life. And many of us are no longer affiliated with religion. And so ritual is a great way to bring sacredness and spirituality to a time where people often would use religion if that's what they use and, as part of their lives. So we can bring sacredness to this end of life. It can provide emotional, relational, and spiritual healing, provide opportunities for inclusivity. I love to include families in ritual as much as possible. And I love to see just how healing that is for them. And it really brings death back to its proper place in the continuum of life rather than a medical event. So by creating ritual, we're really highlighting that it is a rite of passage. So rituals before death, the first thing we want to do is set the tone. And there was a time when I used a really simple way to set the tone with a family. The man who had just died was in his early 40s. He was surrounded by his young children and his wife. And everyone was focused on all the doings and all the things that had to be done after his death. But we really wanted to mark some sacred time with him before he was removed from the home. And one simple way of doing that is we all left the room. And then we came back into the room with a different intention. So we entered the door in a more of a sacred way. And I had the youngest one ring a chime. And that was our way of just setting the tone. A great way to serve people before death is following their vigil plan. So hopefully you've had time to create that with them. You want to consider the senses. Sometimes people are sensitive to smells or tastes, but you want to think about sounds and touch. Some ideas for before death rituals. And I have a picture of this further down, but the first one I'm going to explain. I've done this just once. I made, well, I didn't make them. I had the family members and friends who were sitting at the bedside create thread bracelets. They used embroidery thread, all different colors. And I asked them to choose whatever colors they wanted. And some of them chose colors that represented their friendship with the woman who was dying. Maybe it was their college colors or colors that she loved. And I asked them to make 2 bracelets, one for themselves and one for her. And I had them place knots within the thread, and each knot represented memories. So they put one bracelet on themselves and then one on her. And she wore those into her cremation. And they wore them until they naturally fell off. And it was a great way to include everyone in the room. And they really, I think they really enjoyed that. Forgiveness mantras are great to use pre-death. Maybe like the Ho'oponopono is a good one. Thanking the body. So maybe sitting with someone, maybe touching the shoulders, the hands, and just acknowledging everything that they've done. Including the dying person, if it's something they want to do, having them give away special items as a ritual of saying goodbye. And then creating a living funeral is something else we could do before death. And we're going to move on to during the dying process. And you can see here, these are the bracelets I talked about. So she wore these and was cremated with them. So again, we'll call this the vigil space now. If the person is actively dying, we're going to enter the space with intention. So keeping that sacred space, I like to think about it as creating a bubble around the person that I'm serving. So making sure that there's not a lot of distracting noises or, extra conversations that don't need to be there. So singing quietly or reciting mantra or prayer are beautiful rituals during this time. Anointing the body with oils, which can also be done after death. I would say this is probably my favorite ritual to do. I'm going to share with you the anointing prayer that I use. And when I talked about including family members, I want to share a couple of experiences I had with this anointing. Often we'll witness, there can be a lot of emotion that comes up when someone is dying, especially if there's a lot of unhealed relationships. And I find that including people in these sacred moments, like anointing, can provide a lot of healing. And in one instance, I was working with a family who it consisted of a father who was dying and his 2 daughters, and they had different mothers, and they never got along. There was a lot of competition between them, and that continued while he was on his deathbed. They were almost, fighting over who got to, be at his side. And just before he died, I gave each of the women a few drops of essential oils in their palm. And together on either side of the bed, they anointed their father together. And it was so beautiful and transforming. And when I left that day, they were holding each other and crying together. And so just so powerful what can happen with rituals. And like I said, holding that reverence space is a very simple way to create the sacred. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. I don't know if you, hopefully you can read this. I'll go ahead and read it out loud just in case you can't. So this is an anointing card that I have, and it was created by one of my mentors at the Conscious Dying Institute. And she was a longtime hospice nurse, and I used this with her permission. And I'll start here at the top. As your body is outwardly anointed with this oil, so may you be filled with love. May you be held in a state of grace, affirmed in all your goodness, and may you have eternal peace of mind, body, and spirit. And so then we begin with the forehead. And what I love about this is you can change it around, right? So I like to, if I know more about the person that I'm working with, I might add on different things, right? So we start with the forehead, the eyes, the mouth, the shoulders, the heart, and the hands. And often with the hands, I might say something about maybe they were a creator of some sort, or talk about all the hands that they held in theirs. It's a really beautiful way to honor the body, especially, when we talk about the feet, maybe someone has traveled the world. So we're gonna honor that. And it's a really nice way of thanking the body. I find that when we do this with someone who is nearing death, that you can almost see them just relax into it. There's a softness, a softening that happens here. And just amazing to witness. So powerful. And I'm happy to share this with you all. Okay, I'm going to move on. So these are after death rituals. So again, the anointing can be done before or after. Intentional dressing, body care. You can see in this picture on the right, this gentleman was a Buddhist, and after his death, he was dressed in his robes and his prayer beads with just really beautiful intention. The gentleman to the left was the man that I was speaking about with his young children. They were adorning him with flowers. So in creating rituals according to cultural and religious beliefs. So you always want to make sure that, these are not your beliefs. You really want to tap into what matters to them. Opening a window is a nice way to honor the spirit that's leaving the body. Perhaps ringing a chime. I had a friend who creates beautiful ceremonies, and I was asking her years ago when I was creating my grandmother's funeral, I was looking for rituals to use in a non-religious ceremony, and she recommended that I take a singing bowl or a sound bowl and chime it for each year of her life. And I did that, and I thought it was so beautiful because you hear that chime ringing and ringing and ringing, and then suddenly it stops. And there was just this silence. It was so powerful. So I included that ringing a chime. And again, so maintaining that sacred silence after someone dies, I think is really important, reminding people that there's no emergency, right? So keeping that space as long as possible.
And
May I
Lisa
ask a
is
question?
asking to say something. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry, I can't see
I'm
anything.
curious, can you share, Lynn, what the dynamic was with the communication with the people in the room prior to you taking these images?
Oh, good question. Well, I always ask permission.
Of course.
Yes, and then ask permission after as well. So I have
Because
permission to use these.
the reason I'm asking is as you are officiating the energy in the room and you're doing the things, you're also taking pictures. How did that work?
So these were both done. Well, the one on the left, I was more of a witness. The children were doing their thing. And of course, like I said, I asked permission, and because their family wanted them also, they wanted the pictures as well. So it was that for them also. And the one on the right, this was taken after we had had some time to have ceremony in their home.
I'll share with the group and with you as well, what you probably have done is I have found it really valuable if family members are interested in taking a really tight shot picture of the person before they pass with a family member's hand holding the other person's
Yes.
hand. Those
Mhm.
images are very valuable for folks.
Yes, I love that idea. Yeah, and I'd love to hear more of your everyone's suggestions and thoughts. Um, absolutely. Okay, so we'll move on to this last one, for me at least. So, in this slide, I'm talking more about after death ceremonies, so funerals and celebrations of life. So, some ways that we can honor someone through stories, through toasts, and I've been in services where we're toasting with many different things. We've toasted with whoopie pies. We've toasted with. I did a funeral last week, and um, this gentleman, he loved those peppermints that dissolve into your mouth. So they were passed around the funeral. Everyone had a peppermint in their mouths. Um, so toast, I use that term lightly. Um, I like to use a dissolvable paper where people can write something, and especially if we're at the beach, and they can be thrown into the water or burned. Um, I like to ask each person one by one to share one word. Often people are really shy about speaking, but sharing one word about their beloved that has died is a really wonderful way to get everyone involved. So also blessing soil that's passed around during the ceremony. So I might have a jar of soil that will then be used to plant a tree, and each person is going to put their hands on it and bless it. And then then during the ceremony, it's used to it's put into the pot with the tree or plant that's going to be planted. Um, Communally digging or preparing a grave site, and then home funerals. So these are just a few. I'm sure you all have your own versions, which I can't wait to hear about. So those are some of my favorites. And then I'm going to go to the next slide. And Shanti, I would love to hear.
Actually, if you
Yeah,
want to stay on this one just for a
yes,
minute,
please. Yeah.
and then we'll go. Yeah, because this kind of reminds me of a couple of situations where I was called to the bedside when the person had died but had not been removed from the house yet. And the cool thing about the fact that, like Lynn said, that it's just anything, any small act can be a ritual, and it doesn't have to be prescribed or pre-planned. My friend Mary had died, and I heard that she had died, so I went to the house, and I wasn't one of the closest ones to her, but there were her close friends and her sister, and we hung out for a while. And there's that awkwardness though, because her body's in the bedroom and people are milling around, and it's just kind of hard because there's a hesitation to go into the room or not. And eventually we drifted into her room, and we just kind of got quiet around the bed, and I just did an impromptu thing that just to get the energy moving for the people that were there. We did light a candle. We did find some of her things that we just kind of looked at, and the book at her bedside that she'd been reading, and also some oils that were there, some fragrant oils. And so we each just took a bit on our hand and on our finger, and we touched her with the oil very lightly. And it just gave them a sense that they could move their energy, and that it gave them a little feeling that they could be involved rather than just afraid to touch her. And it also just gave them a real sense of more of a sense of peace than I think they would have had. And then the other situation was a friend who had decided that she didn't want to do my grief group. She was fine. Her daughter was doing well. Her daughter had glioblastoma, brain cancer, since she was 8, but she was now 19. And the cancer was in remission, and they were out playing around on the wheelchair the day before, going shopping and having a lot of fun. So, but she called me that morning and said that her daughter had died, and they found her at like 7 a.m. And she was the middle of three children, one in high school and one it was in her young early 20s. And so I went and spent the day at the house there with them, and they actually kind of created their own. I didn't really need to make any suggestions. They just kind of created what they naturally wanted to do when we were there. And they saw cardinals out the window, and they opened the window, and so it's really sweet. Sometimes, we really don't have to do anything but just be a presence there. And maybe just in our presence, it gives them a little sense of comfort, or a little support. But also the important thing I was there to do was to protect them from the law enforcement people that were trying to get them to remove the body immediately. And they were just waiting on the grandparents. And so realizing the power of just being an ally when the mother was in such numbness and shock and grief, that was really, really cool. So there are a lot of different ways that we can make a difference. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. So this photo was taken this past Sunday. And it's a client of mine whose sister died a year ago. No, it was last Sunday. Yeah, so a year ago Monday. So they were the day before the 1-year anniversary of the death. And the situation here was, very difficult because there had been a car accident where the mom was in the car with her 4 children, aged from 3 to 11 or 10. And the baby and the mom died, and the other children were in the car. Then 2 of the children were separated from the oldest one, and there's varying different situations in the family. So this mom is my client, and she, I call her my participant, is a word I like better. And she was kind of struggling over how to even talk about this anniversary with her niece, who is now living with her. And so this child's been through multiple surgeries and, a lot. And so I found this website called Mary Makes Good. You can make a note of that. And she had these beautiful nature mandalas. And so the mom was, the aunt was at such a loss as to what to do, because the family hasn't been talking about it much. And so we came up with, it turned out that she and her sister had always connected around gardening and what kind of plants and cuttings and flowers. And so that had been a real strong thing with them. And so it being spring, I suggested this nature mandala thing. And so they went and they did this on Sunday afternoon. Turns out a number of friends from out of town were coming to town anyway that day. And so they had a whole group to get out in the garden. And now we can go to the next slide. So yeah, so these are pictures that were taken on Sunday. The girl on the left in the blue, that's the daughter. Her siblings aren't there because they live out of town, but we covered their faces for anonymity. But the couple in the middle is the ones who are caring for her. And then there's 6 children in that one photo, and they're just busy. So for children, it's really important that they be active and do stuff together. And when she told her niece about the plan, she got real excited. So whether she shows outwardly or not, at least, that connection, that activity, and also planting a garden that's going to, grow and go through the seasons and lose life and bring it back. And it's just kind of the cycle of life is there. So, and that is something that the family can work on whenever they want to get out there and they know what that garden is. It's their memorial garden. So that's just one example of, I thought it would be good to talk about how to help children too. That's it for me.
I'm going to stop sharing screen so we can see one another. Um, that reminds me of there's a doula that I took a course with. She's out on the West Coast. And when she's sitting vigil, she always creates a mandala for that person with, things that she finds around their home or their yard or things that she brings with her. And so while they're going through their passage, she's creating that. And I just think that's such a beautiful way to I think of it as like it's setting a pin in that place and time, but it's impermanent, right? So we can't get stuck on things always staying the same, but in that moment, it's beautiful. And I just think that's a really powerful symbol. So I'd love to hear some of your rituals that you've used or heard of, or um, things you'd like to try, or questions. Wide open. Lisa.
So I'll share with you, and it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but as you are maybe aware, so heat leaves the body through the top of the head and also through other parts of the body, obviously. But my experience is that sometimes the heat at the top of the head can intensify as persons are getting closer towards end of life. And I've had some really precious experiences with me taking my own hand and just holding it over the top of the crown of the head of the person, and then helping family members to have the courage to put their own hand there to feel the heat coming from their loved one from the top of the head. And without fail, they're like, oh my goodness, I can really feel it, and it's a visceral experience for them to have that, the touch, the feeling of the heat coming from the person's body. And it's a simple, small thing that can take moments, but I've dealt with a lot of families that are a little less woo-woo than the mandalas and the candle culture. A little tougher around the edges. And sometimes, I'm always looking for things that are a little less, I just call it woo-woo. You know what I mean?
Sure,
a little
sure.
less, I don't know, ethereal or something, but that the whole thing about feeling the heat from the top of the head has worked really, really well with people.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's important to speak to, that we want to, create something in the moment that really is serving the people that we're with, right? Um, last thing we want to do is kind of force our own beliefs or what we want for that person's death. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, I'll go. I don't
Yeah.
know if you can see this, but I'm going to try to show it to you on my phone. See, I never know with these things. Hold on. Yeah, sometimes it will
Just
click in.
white.
No, it's weird. No, you can't see it. Yeah, and it's basically going in nature with people, making, whether it's a heart, a circle, it doesn't matter the shape, but have them collect sticks and stones and flowers and grasses and different things around. They can even bring some flowers from, Trader Joe's or something, take all the petals off so they have colors. And then we go in nature together and basically let it unfold organically, the shape, and start talking about a story, a memory that they have of their person, or something they learn from their person, something they'll miss about their person. And just putting shapes down as we're talking, and everyone is just taking a turn and hearing the stories. And it leads to an opening up, which is really nice. And then in the end, I'll usually have people take a picture of it if they want to, and let the family decide whether to leave it there or to kind of blow it away like a sand painting, and that nothing is permanent, and yet it's something that you always have. And so several times we've taken a photo. I did this for my very close friend who lost her mother. she and her daughter came, and the three of us did one for her mother. And they took a picture in the end, and I did too. And I had the picture made into blankets for each of them. So they had a blanket of the thing that we created. And the daughter, who was 19, said to me, that was just the most memorable thing ever. I mean, that I have this blanket with that picture of something I created, and it's a connection to my grandmother, that textural blanket. So yeah, I just love doing things in nature. So it really spoke to me about Mary Makes Good. I didn't know about that. The other thing I'd like to just say is, if you haven't seen Amanda Stronza, she's on Instagram, and she's an anthropologist, but she's traveled around the world, and she takes animals that she finds and she dresses them. She doesn't like the word roadkill, and she takes the animals and feels like we don't look at them. We see them on the road and pass by, but she's like, look at them, see their face, like just that they have a sweet soul. So she does this with animals, and I've kind of incorporated that with some pet loss of people who want to decorate all around the pet, almost making a mandala with flower petals on the body and all around it, taking a picture. But she does it with animals she finds on the road, but her work is gorgeous. And she lost her own dog, and her dog is the sweetest looking dog. And her dog used to go with her on all these things she did. So it's just so sweet. Her name is Amanda Stronza, and check her out on Instagram. Her work is beautiful.
Thank you. Would you spell that
Yeah, it's
Stranza?
Stronza.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I love that that idea of creating an image from an experience and then turning it into something else that can provide comfort later on. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Could
Oh,
be a
wonderful.
picture or a blanket or something.
Right.
So yeah, it is nice.
Wonderful. I had a client who died last summer, and just a day or two before, we kept noticing a big hawk that was sitting on the pool cage, just kind of waiting. It's the same person that I did the bracelets with, and I saw it as a sign that it was time for us to. I was waiting to do an anointing and including the family, and I saw it. I thought, okay, so now's the time. And afterwards, I mentioned it to her mother, and I still hear from her. And she always tells me about the hawks whenever we speak. And so, just this simple noticing of what was happening in that moment when her daughter was dying is still giving comfort. It's just beautiful. Yeah. Tracy?
So, excuse me, I've been sick and I lost my voice.
Oh,
My experience has always been clinical. So I've always been in a hospital or a nursing home. I haven't had very many experiences where I'm in people's residences. And so being in those environments, you have a lot of restrictions. You can't light candles, you can't use smoke. And I'm from Oregon. We're all very woo-woo out there. Everybody just embraces everything out there. And I had this one patient, he was Buddhist and he really wanted to die on grass. He wanted to feel the earth, and he was in the hospital and he was going to die in the hospital, and there was no way we could move him out, and his family wasn't going to discharge him. And we were able to go to Home Depot and get a strip of sod and lay it on some plastic on the floor in his room, and that worked. So I've always had these like institutional restrictions. So I'm taking lots of notes about what you all have done in people's homes, and I find it very exciting to be able to do that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And I'd love to hear, as I do a lot of nursing home visits. So I'd love to hear more about ways to bring the sacred into those institutions. I have a package of LED candles that I'll use, and maybe just turn the lights down lower. I don't know. So what else?
Yeah,
What other things?
we had all the battery candles. We did a lot of anointings. I had a lot of different essential oils depending on their favorite scents. We used a lot of nature, flowers, branches, leaves, singing bowls, chanting, music. The hospital I worked in had a music thanatologist. So she
Wow.
would play the harp in the background, which was really cool. There's a lot of different things we can do, but like I just get excited knowing like lighting candles and maybe burning some incense and yeah, there's a lot more. Like going outside was not really an option because we were on a highway. It's not very sacred sounding. But like memorial gardens and planting something, like I've never really done anything like that. When people left the nursing home or the hospital, like that kind of stuff, there was no follow-up where I worked, so
Mhm.
it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Hmm.
Can I say something?
Absolutely. Hi, Deirdre.
Hi. Hello, everyone. This is the first time Lynn invited me, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I'm love hearing the stories. It's very helpful for me. I had a cousin who lived in Indiana. He had a farm, and he had 11 miniature horses and one big quarter horse that thought he was a miniature horse. And so my mom and myself and my stepfather, we all went up there and, had fun with the horses and had fun with my cousin and did a lot of wonderful things. And then years later, he got very sick and he ended up getting cancer and was actively dying. So we went up. And at that time, I wasn't, I've only been end-of-life doula for about a year now. So this was way back in 2008. So I didn't know I didn't even know that this existed. I don't even know if it did. I don't know. Anyway, but I was a part of a women's group and I had learned what was called making a puja, which is a Hindu ritual, which you offer water, food, flowers, things of that nature to either the divine or the person. And so when I was there, my cousin, he was in bed and he really wasn't getting up anymore. And so I told my mom, I said, why don't we make a puja? And she said, of course, what is that? So I told her, so what I did is I walked the entire property and I just picked leaves and branches and grass and anything natural, flowers, anything that really spoke to me as I walked the property. And I made 3 pujas. So I made one for myself, one for my mom, and one for our cousin. And the morning that we were going to leave, of course, we said goodbye to him and we went out. He had a big pond on his property and we walked out there before the sun came up, and I had a prayer that I had found online, a beautiful prayer, and we went out and we said our prayer and we released the pujas in the water, and we basically sent a protection out to all the horses, a safe crossing for our cousin. And I don't think until recently, I haven't really thought about it, realized just how sacred that was. I think I just really wanted my cousin to just pass peacefully, and I wanted the horses to be okay. And I just wanted the whole transition of the property and the horses, and even for him to just be well. Mm-hmm. And I think at the time I wasn't really, I guess, thinking about that so much. just wanting to do something special for him. So that's basically what we ended up doing, you know, and I'm so happy that we did, you know, looking back on that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, I think what I love about that, I call it ceremonies on the fly. So it's good
Yeah,
to,
yeah. That's what it
because
was.
we don't always know what we're walking into, especially with people that we haven't met,
Mhm.
or you know, I've been called in at the last minute, so I don't know the person that well, and so it's good to have some ideas, but then also like just feel what's there,
Mhm.
and trust that the right thing will come to you.
Yeah,
I think that's so wonderful.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I just muted myself. Anyone we haven't heard from me want to share
I'll,
anything? Yeah,
I'll go
Nicole.
real quick. I've only done a few. So when my father was passing, I sang to him and I read to him his favorite Western book. And then for as far as hospice goes, I'm kind of limited on what I can and can't do inside the facilities and stuff. So my one patient that passed on Halloween, I took my Native American flute and my singing bowl and my rattles, and I was able to do some of that. And he also loved Western, so I read to him my dad's favorite Western. So those were some things that I was able to do. So I have a few new patients that have been assigned through hospice that may be coming close to that time. So I'm excited to see what they would like initiated for when that time does come. So yeah, so I'm happy to get any thoughts and ideas for the restrictions. So I was curious with the sod bringing it in, did they try to give you any trouble for like bringing the sod into an hospital? Because some people have grass allergies and stuff. So I can just imagine like some places may put up like a you know, resistance, I guess, to certain things. So being creative was a good idea. Just wondering how to get some of those loopholes, you know.
Yeah, so at my hospital, there were 13 of us chaplains, and I was the only interfaith chaplain. So once the charge nurse sees me on floor, there's like this sigh and roll of the eye. She knows something's going to be going on. So yeah, there I just would, you know, beg and plead and say, I'll clean it up and it'll be fine. You know, there's just you you find the person in charge and become their best friend and do favors for them and, you know, be as nice and kind as possible so that when you need a favor, they'll do it for you. And, you know, I've asked for a lot of things and not all of them, you know, I got. We had a huge Native American community and they always wanted burn sage, always wanted smoke. And that was just something that I could never get allowed. Um, so, but yeah, this particular instance, we were able to do it. And I had to get a lot of people on board because I couldn't pull it off myself. So, I mean, you just do what you got to do, I guess.
I'd love to share something that what you said, Tracy, sparked me to remember that we have some colleagues outside of Asheville that have created a place called the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. I might have that wrong. CCLD, Center for Conscious Living and Dying. Yeah. And so, yeah, look it up if you haven't heard of it. The backstory is just incredible, maybe for another time, but it's related to a documentary that's being released called The Last Ecstatic Days. So the people that were part of that documentary went and then created this center. So one of the things they do in the center, it's a place for people to come and die, and also a place for respite for families and caregivers. When someone is in their dying time, they have fire tenders. So somewhere on the property, someone is tending a fire around the clock, honoring that person who's dying. And I wonder if that's something that we could offer obviously on a smaller scale, if you have someone who's requesting a fire or smoke, letting them know that I've got a fire burning for you, and having them know that that has happened. I wonder if that would give some comfort. So we have a few more minutes.
Yeah,
Shanti.
I can share a little more. Yeah, one thing I was thinking about was, of course, when you're in the final stages of dying, sometimes people want to do certain things, or I don't know, say certain things. I can't even imagine, but it might be a little too much sometimes, or distracting from your sense of quiet. And but I was thinking even before, like if you're having a patient that they are still getting around in the wheelchair, or getting out and about, and doing a roundabout, like doing a walkabout, like where they purposely connect. You help them connect with the people around in a kind of new and special way, maybe, like the person might, I don't know, any little thing that they might say, I love white roses, and or just something they'd want to share, some simple thing even. And then as they are dying, somehow whispering in their ear, Marie said she's got a white rose for you, or so, I don't know, just some little thing where you're whispering in their ear and you're giving them something that might have a meaning for them, that they might be recalling the love of that person, or the connection. The other thing I remember in our training was to do visualization. So if they have a favorite ride down the river in the canoe, like, I don't know, you could share a little memory that they have actually fed to you, that they have, and going across the river, and there's their brother, or it's a childhood memory even from many years ago. They could have some meaning. But I think it's also tricky because you don't want to feed them too much stuff, like get them too busy. So that's where getting to know your person comes in. I've made that mistake one time of turning on certain music that I said, "How was that?" And they go, "No." I'm like, "Oops, sorry." Oh well. Yeah, Alyssa.
I'm curious to know, so everybody's described so far patients that are actively dying, peaceful. So what's your experience like with guppy breathing or agonal breathing at end of life, and ritual around that?
That's a good question.
I
I
mean,
wouldn't
because
call it
it
so.
happens, right? I mean, it
Sure, sure.
happens.
I don't know if
Not
I'd call it so
everybody
much
dies peacefully.
ritual. Sometimes I'll breathe with someone. I'll audibly breathe with them. Um, or just do Reiki, having my hand on their chest. Um, I sometimes think about it as like laboring, as it would in birth, and I'll let them know, like, you're doing a really good job. Kind of talking them through. I don't know. Those are just some instinctual things. I don't know if anyone else has some thoughts about that.
So sometimes, not sometimes, often I will get right in their ear and say, "You're safe. You're safe."
Mm.
Just quietly, just to remind them that they're safe. And then the complicated part, of course, becomes when you've got family members around that are very uncomfortable. I'm sorry, very uncomfortable with witnessing that.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes, Tracy.
I've always tried to get family when that's happening, because yeah, it's very unsettling to just explain to them what's happening, but also get them to, participate in maybe swabbing their mouth with some water, combing their hair, just massaging them, showing them that they can relax I always say patient, relax the person, I think helps them relax a little bit. I mean, it is an uncomfortable process, their loved ones dying.
Mhm.
I don't know. I've always tried to get family to participate in like grooming and hand massaging.
The only problem with that though is excessive touch on persons who are actively dying is not a great
Oh,
idea in my experience.
absolutely.
It's just
Very
not.
gentle, yeah.
Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who would like to share anything or ask a question or? Just want to be sure everyone has a chance.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing all your wonderful thoughts and ideas and just being part of this conversation. We enjoy it so much. I'll give a quick update on the association before we close out. That's okay. So how long have we been an association now, Shanti?
We incorporated January 9th last year. So we started meeting, I think, in September of 22.
Okay. So I don't know how many doulas are in the state of Florida now, but it's just been amazing to see how much our work is growing. And we're really dedicated in building this community of doulas statewide. And one of the things that we're working on almost there is creating a directory for end-of-life doulas. And we hope that when that's available, we'll send out templates for all your information where you can join the directory. And that way, throughout the entire state, people can find you either by your location or the work that you do. And so that we can continue to grow in strength as doulas in the state of Florida. These calls are a big part of what we love to do as well. And we are expanding. We're got some new board members that will be joining us soon. So you'll see some new faces in the next coming months. And we'll be back this time next month. So it's always the first Tuesday of the month that we have a call. So put on your calendar. We'll announce our topic. And if you ever want us to dive into anything or want to be a guest presenter on any of these calls, we're wide open to that. And we love to hear from you. So yeah, is there anything else, Shanti?
Yeah, and if anyone is interested in being on our board, please let us know. I put my email there on my picture. And then we haven't set our dues yet. We don't know what we're going to be asking for annual dues. It is the first year, so but we're almost there. We haven't quite gotten there. And then of course we are glad to accept donations from you for the work we're doing here today. We have a Cash App, which is $FEOLDA, FEOLDA, and then I can put it in the chat. We have our PayPal as well, which is FLEOLDA@gmail.com. We're running on a pretty tight budget right now. In fact, I've been loaning a little bit for things, but we're very excited and hopeful about this growth because we feel like we're really getting ready to take off. So just really grateful. And but yeah, we want our board now has 4 people on it, so we'd like to get a couple more people in there. So yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for your kind words and your presence and your wisdom.